Hello! Easter is coming, and as usual we are trying a new idea. This time the idea is creating Easter egg cups. We've got a lot of egg cups options on our website. You can watch the ideas of previous years. But this time we'd like to create a more practical tray you can use the whole year round, while the removable cups are meant for Easter only. I've tried a lot of different ideas and I'd like to share them with you. At first, a few years about my experiments. I've tried different techniques of cup making, so a couple of words on each technique. First, I experimented with normal flat woven strips. Here you can see braid. This one is made in 6-tube herring style. Well, each of these experiments has a right to exist. You can also try a regular herring or experiment with a strip width. But this joint, well, you can hide or decorate it in some way, of course. Anyway, I've given up the idea. As well, I've tried making such cups in a normal straw weaving technique. I do like the result. They are rather nice looking and fast to weave. So this method can be used too. I've tried a knot style technique, but it seems too laborious. I like such cups, based on spiral weaving. They look rather interesting. Well, there's nothing difficult about them, everything is quite clear. If you are well familiar with spiral weaving, you can easily make such an egg cup. There's even such a snifter among my experiments. But most of all, I like the egg cups woven in the technique of wrapping, so I'd like to share it today. A few words about tubes. Here you can see two examples. One has been woven of thick tubes, while the second one is made of thin tubes. In both cases the tubes have been rolled on a knitted needle number 1, but here I've used a 10.5 cm, about 4 inches wide strip, while in the second item the strip was 7 cm, 2.53 inches wide. So as you can see, they both are rather nice looking but quite different. For one cup I prepare 3 workpieces like this. I personally use this wooden egg as a base, but you can use a normal large egg, a foam plastic ball, a bottle, any cylinder of required diameter, whatever you have. Stick the tail with the help of school glue and prepare 3 workpieces of identical diameter. So take one prepared ring and the tubes prepared beforehand. The tubes were painted with a mixture of colorant, water and primer. After they got dry, I've coated them with 1 portion of Wood Protect soak and 2 portions of water. If you'd like to get to know more about tube preparing, I'd recommend masterclasses by Alena Bugrova. I'm using much of her advice, sometimes adding my own experiments. Anyway, her recipe is very efficient. This time I've used Alena's recipe to prepare my tubes. What is essential, the tubes are wet. Take a look please at the way I prepare them, with a wet center and dry ends. It is important both for wrapping and for root weaving. We've got a masterclass on wrapping, you can watch it in case you've missed it. I wrap a ring in such a way to leave the intervals between the coils identical to the working tube width, to be able to fit in one more coil in the next row. Continue. Lengthen the tube and continue wrapping up to the end of the row. So I've reached the end of the row. It is where I join one more ring as a second layer. Start wrapping 2 rings. Take a look, please. I've connected 2 rings with a long coil. The next is short coil. Then one more long coil. It gets into the gap between the coils of the first row. Then a short coil again. Long, short. The tubes are very flexible and nice to work with. I will repeat the detailed recipe in the post on our website. I will share the link beneath the video. Lengthen the tube. It is very important to lengthen the tube in a proper way. I make such a long, sharp cut-off. Cut a scruffy end of a unused tube and unite them very carefully to make the joint as invisible as possible. Here I cut the glued end, since it is too rigid. Now the tube end is much easier to lead between the rows. Alternate short and long stitches. The best point for the tube lengthening is a short stitch. The joint will be hidden between the coils, which will make it almost invisible. That is why, even if I've got some more tube left to weave, I prefer cutting a longer tail to hide a joint in a short coil. In the same way I join the third ring. In this row I cannot do without a skewer or an awl, some auxiliary device. In the third row I'm only grabbing the 2 upper rings. The top ring with a short coil and lead under the second row, covering a short coil with a long one. Nothing difficult at all, just alternate short and long stitches following the pattern. If the tubes are prepared in a proper way, wet middle and dry ends, they are very convenient to weave with. Even if the tubes got a bit dry, but they were coated with wood protection soak, they are easy to weave anyway. I've reached the end, the last coils, a long one, and finish with a short one. Now I've got quite a symmetric item with no beginning or end invisible. Lead the tube to the wrong side and lead it through the inside coils very carefully and neatly. Try your best to make the joint less visible. Press it carefully. From the front side it is quite invisible. Cut the tail neatly. That's all, the egg cup is ready. So, we've got such an egg cup made in wrapping technique. Let me add a few words on the way I've woven these two egg cups. Please notice the difference. The dark one is woven of thick tubes, 10.5 cm wide strips, while the light one is made of thinner tubes, 7 cm wide strips. The difference is quite clear. If you take a closer look, this one looks nicer, the pattern is more volumetric. So let me show you the way I've woven these cups. I cut 7 tubes into halves and start weaving in a normal rope-like technique, adding poles at 1 cm, about half an inch intervals. Well, you can draw the pattern if you are unsure, but I've got used to weaving without. Weave a kind of a fence in a normal rope-like manner. I'm adding new poles until the fence embraces the base entirely. So, hug the egg, and leaving the first row beneath, continue weaving a rope. Lengthen the working tube. Weave 3 rows. I've experimented with different numbers of rows, but 3 is an optimal one. Since I'm going to trim the top and the bottom, visually it will look like 5 rows. It is quite enough to make a stable egg cup. So I've got 3 rows. Now I'm going to tuck the tails in. As a result, I've got such a workpiece. Now let's start trimming the edges in a manner called birch rod. First, trim one edge. 1, 2. Normal birch rod style technique with cutting the tails. Well, I'd better take the base out to make it easier. Continue. As you know, small items are a bit more laborious than large ones. But anyway, you can make it rather neat. Finish edge trimming, leading the last working tubes through the coils. The last tail is to go through this coil. Do it very neatly and carefully. Well, you can work with entire tubes, but I decided to save the material, having calculated that 1 tube is quite sufficient for 2 poles. As a result, I've got such an edge. Trim the second edge in the same very way, after which cut the remainders neatly. As a rule, I cover the cracks with remaining paint in solution. So, as a result, we are going to get an egg cup like this. I'll repeat myself that I like this one very much too. So, these three are my favorites.